We have got a great episode coming up for you today. Anticipated Brooklyn Nets basketball games postponed. Kevin Durant in protocols. Kyrie Irving returned, now also in protocols. We're going to dive in on the changing landscape for the NBA, how we think that there are adjustments on the horizon so they can continue to have a quality product on the court and not put a lot of teams like the Brooklyn Nets into difficult spots on a night in, night out basis. And also, Doug, touch on what was a near perfection performance from the young crew over the weekend on a Saturday night against Orlando.
Nets get the day off. We don't take a day off, buddy. We're going to talk Nets basketball from here until eternity. Whether they're playing or not, we're coming at you every single day talking Brooklyn Nets basketball. This is an easy one. I'll talk about the protocols, all the stuff you mentioned, get into that game as well. But first, the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo.
All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I am at Adam Armbrecht covering the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast. He is at Doug Norney, Blue Check Certified Fresh and owner-operator DFSR for all your daily fantasy sports rankings. If you need daily projections, DraftKings, FanDuel, he's got you covered. We remind you for being thankful that you're coming in and making us your first listen every single day. And that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Doug, we come in on a Sunday evening, what'll be heard by most people on Monday, following one heck of a couple-day stretch between the return of a superstar, more Brooklyn Nets into protocols, cancellations of games. We're going to get to all of that stuff. And then a near victory for the Nets over the weekend in spite of all the chaos around the team. How are we, sir?
Oh, buddy, great. I mean, thought we'd be watching a game right now. Kind of became pretty apparent pretty early on Sunday that wasn't going to be the case. And, you move on. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You jumped on and did a great job talking about the Kyrie Irving piece coming back. I mean, obviously he's not back yet, but just the move and the sort of expected / unexpected move that he would be rejoining the team in a part-time role. Totally here for it. And I mean, I think we kind of saw the writing on the wall beginning to become clearer and clearer over the course of the week that this was the way things were moving, or at least the Nets should give it a try, right? Like, This is worth it considering this current state of the team and the league and stuff. So, we can talk about that a little bit for sure, because I'm personally very glad that they decided to make the move.
Yeah, I think it makes all the sense in the world. Like you said, I came in, hit all the bullet points. You can go back and check out that episode. Just talks about expectations, the steps that the Brooklyn Nets went through. Obviously, the filter through Kevin Durant and the players, Sean Marks, Joseph Tsai, everyone's involved in it. And then also setting expectations for what Kyrie Irving can bring back to this team, available for obviously only the road games, at least at the infancy of his return to the Brooklyn Nets. But I said it there, and I'll repeat it again here. You had been couched inside that idea of, there's no reason to not consider this move if the idea is simply because it hadn't been done before. So if we agree that this was is something that should have been on the table and the Nets chose to go this direction, I'll give you the layup. Are you excited to see Kyrie back on the court for the Brooklyn Nets?
I mean, of course, we've wanted him back from the beginning. This is a total no-brainer. He's one of the top 15 best players in basketball, 20 at worst. And so, like, when you have this kind of talent just sitting on the bench or sitting at home, even worse, then there's no basketball fan in their right mind doesn't want Kyrie Irving to return to their team. I get that there's other stuff that comes, there's, relative baggage that comes with him. And we've been through this for a couple of years now. So, and that's unlikely to change. Like, something else will happen that is just in the cards for him. But in terms of just a strict basketball 101 kind of thing, of course you want him back. And I'll say too, the thing where, I never really understood the pushback around trying to bring him back, which we faced, like, somewhat considerable pushback on just the idea of saying, hey, why not just try it? okay, sure, no one's done it before. Literally, who
Mhm.
cares? Like the best, sometimes the
Sure.
best decisions are made around things that no one's done before. But especially now in this COVID racked situation that the NBA has gone through, they're signing guys who were like literally off the street to play games. You'd rather do that than just bring Kyrie Irving back into the fold on a part-time basis. Half the players in the league are on a part-time basis right now. So I just don't, I just didn't, I never understood the pushback considering the context around it. And this isn't a comment on vaccines or anything, because I don't think that's really actually even germane to the argument at this point. Like it's like that we're well past where that's part of the consideration, I think.
No, yeah, I think it's a simple process of saying that the Brooklyn Nets had X stance, which was we're not going to have Kyrie be a part of the team on a part-time basis. That's where they stood on at the start of the year, and things look dramatically different now. And by the way, we're going to get into essentially more Nets entering into the protocol, something that the league and a lot of teams are facing right now, and what led to the postponement of a couple of games for them. But if you think that these things aren't connected to one another. You're seeing the wear down around Kevin Durant. You're seeing the extra lift that he has to do. You're wondering, where is James Harden in his process, and how long is it going to take him to get back to full strength, full speeder, the best version of himself this year? You said it. Teams are having to use the hardship exemption to sign players, to bring guys in. Very few teams, nay, no other team in the league has the option to say, we can bring in a top 15, top 20 talent in the league to help stem this tide. So that as much is the influence, I think, on the decision-making process for the Brooklyn Nets as anything. And you can comment on that before we get into, obviously,
Well,
Kevin Durant also enters the protocols as well. And that's ultimately the big catalyst for the postponements.
there's one more piece that I just wanted to comment with the Kyrie thing, which I saw, multiple people sort of commenting in this way, was that that there's idea that the Nets brass folded, right?
Oh, yeah. And I pushed back this on
bent.
Friday, too. Yeah.
Okay, right. So that they bent the knee, or they kind of like, just backtracked and they look weak. It's like it completely miss though that kind of commentary around it. I think really misses the forest for the trees. And frankly, it's like a little insulting to the Nets organization, who has been very good and process driven since they took over. And so if the rest of your processes around player movement, drafting, bringing in superstars, developing culture, all this stuff that's been basically an A+ from the top, from day one, to then look at the brass around this decision and say, oh, they're weak and they folded. It's like, I don't know how both things can exist in the same universe. I don't know how you can think both things. Like you can't
Yeah.
think, like, I don't know. They feel completely, well, they can feel completely separate and tied together. Like if you think they're really great and process driven and have like a culture and have all this stuff, but then around this one thing, they turn super soft and, and bent to someone's wishes. It's like, it's very insulting, I think, to a group of people that seem to have been among the best decision makers in all of basketball, who then maybe looked back at a decision and said, I wish we maybe hadn't have done that. Like, 'cause I think that was the situation the Nets did. I think they looked back and said, okay, that was what we thought about in the moment in this totally new, out of nowhere situation that literally got handed to us. They made a decision. It's a couple months later. They said, okay, we're doing a new decision. I just
Yeah.
don't know how that's, not everything needs to be this binary win-loss kind of thing. Like, it's not like that. It's just the situation's different now. So they changed their mind. Great. You want people that think like this to run your team.
Well, I think to your point too, it's the Brooklyn. If you're going to be, as we've always said, right, you're going to look at this organization and say, boy, they've made a lot of really great moves. Sean Marks has really orchestrated so much success. We're going to touch on later in the episode about some rookies that have stepped up and what that looks like and how that's to the credit of the organization, right? Finding talent. So it's really hard to be complimentary around things that you maybe agree with or you see the success of. And then if you maybe disagree with a decision, that's when you think that they're making bad decisions or that the process doesn't work. So I don't think you can be in a position to cherry pick what you like or dislike and then build your opinion around an organization off of that. You and I have often said too, it's like everything hasn't been perfect for the Brooklyn Nets, even before signing the superstars, but you get the benefit of the doubt, because when you build up to this point, you build it to the place of being able to sign superstars and everything else. Yeah, you're going to get my benefit of the doubt. And you mentioned there at the end, it's key to say, you make a decision with the information you have at hand. I think it's a credit to the Brooklyn Nets that they were capable of getting more information and making a new decision and not feeling beholden to something. Because there's just, in sports in general, it's far too often that you chastise bad organizations who make a choice and won't back off of it, whether it's on a player they drafted, whether it's on a guy they released, a player they traded, right? Any decision that they may have made, they'll keep driving the point home because they feel like they need to couch themselves inside of that perspective. And it's, again, it's true in life, true in basketball or sports. Be agile, be willing to adapt. That's a credit to your ability to take in information and make different decisions. So that being the case, when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets organization and the choice to bring back Kyrie, which we're both excited about, want to get into now additional Nets entering into the protocol and what led to the postponement of a couple of games here. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at Truebill. That's because they are the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. That's because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And they even have a fancy concierge that will negotiate better rates on the subscriptions that you want to keep. So you don't have to interact with any of these companies. They'll take care of all the legwork for you. Truebill has had over 2 million users and helped save them over $100 million. Don't fall for the subscription scams anymore. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now to truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. So back inside of the Brooklyn Nets organization, they went through it. They won a couple of games, incredibly shorthanded, but still had Kevin Durant. And then, as you said, early in the day, and this is actually going back over onto Saturday, you hear that Kevin Durant goes into the protocols. And just from a number standpoint, you knew for all the hardship exemptions they've utilized, all the other players that they've brought in, it felt like this was trending in a direction of, well, they're going to be run too thin here. So you end up getting multiple games canceled now after the Saturday night game against Orlando, which, again, this is not unique to the Brooklyn Nets, but it is something that teams are having to navigate. And I'll go silver lining that if Kevin Durant doesn't want to rest himself on a game-to-game basis, he has to rest now.
Yeah, a few days break isn't the worst thing in the entire world. I mean, obviously, assuming that he's
healthy and okay,
asymptomatic and healthy, and blah blah blah, and of course, we're always gonna just assume that to be the case. But yeah, like 3 games total postponed, scheduled for Sunday, and then the Nets game is also for Tuesday is going to be postponed as well, just to be able to clear all these guys. I'm sure the NBA has Christmas Day on its sights. They want to make sure that the Nets are going to be able to suit up for that game. And basically just said, we'll just call the ball here and cancel this one, because even with the hardship exemptions, signing Galloway, signing Shaq Harrison, signing James Ennis, and then they also signed Whitney and Gabriel. Even that was like that was going to be their whole team. They didn't have anybody left. So because I think because Day'Ron Sharpe went into the protocols too, in addition to like every other person that had played minutes. So I think it's like fine to have postponed this one. It makes sense. At some point, you need to say, this just isn't an NBA product here, and like we don't need to continue to play the games. It probably begs the question of like what the long-term solution is to the issue, but I think for at least the time being, for this Sunday's game under the current set of rules, it made sense not to play it. And then to kind of just kick the can down the road a little bit. So I was in agreement. I sent out like the most poorly timed tweet today where I was like, it's not that big of a deal. Lots of teams are still 100% healthy, which they mostly were when I sent it. And then like 3 games got canceled within the 30 minutes after I sent that. So I was like, you can thank me for everyone entering the protocols. But I think in general, the way they handled it around the Nets team under the current set of rules was the correct way to go.
Yeah, and I think, well, that's how quickly, right? That's how quickly things change, because all of a sudden news breaks. It's 1, 2, it's 3 more players going into protocols, and you start to just look at it, and then you take into account what's happening with the other teams as well. But I do think if you're the league, when you look at these postponements or moving games, it probably I would think when you look at the Brooklyn Nets, you say, well, they already played now. They've already gone, including Saturday night, 3 incredibly shorthanded games. So at what point here are we now, whether it's going to be into more protocols for current players, whether it's going to be risking injuries, like at some point you're saying, well, you have 8, so you can go out there. But you mentioned, we signed 3 guys, to the hardship exemption. We're losing players left and right here. You're inevitably going to need to pause it to get everyone back up to speed and let everyone fill out their rosters a little bit more. And I think you're right too. The 25th, the game against the Lakers, that's obviously an important day for the NBA calendar. And if it means foregoing some games now, not just for the Nets, but other teams, then you have to do that now, because otherwise you're going to run up against it, right? So what, the 18th, 19th, like you're only a few days away here before the Brooklyn Nets aren't capable of fielding a team when it comes to that big game.
And I think what we're going to see now after the dust settles with this current round of guys and protocols, I think we're going to see what the NFL has done. This is just a guess, but I think everything's trending this way, is that they're going to lighten the testing load, because look, I'm going to be very careful what I say here. The increase in cases is, this could have been the same amount of cases that have been kind of going on for a long time. It's just that after Thanksgiving, the league ramped up its testing, right? Like they ramped up the testing prior to what they had been doing. And then, of course, you're going to get a lot more cases. From what we hear, most are asymptomatic. Most times these players come back the second they can come back off the protocols. Like they're not staying out with long extended illness absences. Like they are, for the most part, thank goodness, fine. And then they come back as soon as they're able to clear what the logistical protocol is. I think what we'll see from the NBA soon is what the NFL has done, which is say, hey, from now on, we're going to test people that are symptomatic. And if you're asymptomatic, we're just not going to be testing, because I just think that's the only, because COVID's not going away. People are going to continue contracting COVID, whether you're vaccinated or not. Everyone basically in the league, except for Kyrie, is vaccinated, and a few people, and all the support staff is vaccinated too. They've taken all the necessary steps around this thing, as they see it to be correct. And you'll just see that the league will say, we're just going to dial back the testing. And when you dial back the testing, where these asymptomatic people are just going to be able to go out and play. I'm really only saying this logistically. It's the only way to keep the season going. Otherwise, this will just keep happening. Like Kevin Durant's had COVID. Kevin Durant's tested positive for COVID multiple times now. Like it will continue happening. It'll be a logistical nightmare. They're not pausing the season. They're not going to a bubble. No one is doing that again. That's not an option. Like everyone can just get that part out of their head.
And I know that there's been some conversation around what the league may do around capacity inside of arenas, and maybe that's something they consider. But all of these decisions and all this process is around making money and making back money lost, right? And that's why when you say about pausing the season, bubbling, like all that stuff takes time, takes logistics that the NBA was not preparing for or planning on doing. So it's just not a viable option at this point of the season. Barring
this is like, look, this is an entire economy. This is not about the players. There's staff, there's coaching staff, there's management staff, there's staff within the teams, there's vendors. Like
arena
this is
workers.
not just this is not just players who show up and bounce the ball a few times and they'll make a couple $1 million. I mean, this is a $1 billion industry of which that affects many people. And you cancel a game, it affects many people, like lots and lots of people that work for these places. And if the players are mostly fine and everyone else is vaccinated around them, I've been saying this for a while, like just go to, like, just if you're okay to play. We've joked for years in the NBA, especially if you do NBA DFS, like the NBA flu was always a thing. It was that like during this time of year, guys got sick a lot and would sit out games. Now, sometimes the joke was that they would like kind of went hard the night before and that was kind of a rest and they had the flu, right? But it is a wintertime game played inside. Like this sickness has happened. Like it's going to happen. And I think if they just treat it like this around, especially now we know around COVID and we know about, severity and stuff like that, they're just going to go to a place where it says, we need to keep playing. And it's also just okay to do this. This is okay around the health piece.
By the way, this again ties back into the decision around just being willing to take in new information and make an adjustment to what you think is the proper thing to do. We said it about the Brooklyn Nets. We're saying it about the NBA. If you're looking at it, as you said, primarily everyone in the league is vaccinated. There's a handful of guys that are not. And by the way, if you're not, Kyrie Irving, when he comes back, should he end up, and he entered the protocols immediately upon returning to the team, should he test positive for COVID next month when he's back? Yes, he'll be beholden to the same long-term holdout that anybody was. But everyone, if you're asymptomatic, again, keep driving the point home. Same thing, the flu. Well, if you look like you're feeling really sick and crappy, then you shouldn't be playing. If you're asymptomatic, then you can go and play, because that simple adjustment just means you're at no greater risk to the people around you, especially when you see the groups in which how it's kind of 4 or 5 or sometimes 6 guys together because they're practicing and traveling and playing games together. You know that it's going to hit multiple people on a team. So it makes all the sense in the world for the NBA to take the step back and say, if you feel good, you can go out and play. And if you don't feel good, by the way, there's not going to be any issue with taking time away from it. And some of the same adjustments, like being able to sign hardship contracts, the exemptions, those things will still stay in place. It'll just be a mechanism that affords more players to be available and be there for their teams to play games. Because if not, I don't see this cycle that we've now seen over the past month or since Thanksgiving. This cycle is going to happen again after Christmas. It's going to happen again as you get into January and probably linger over into February. And at some point,
it'll happen next year. It'll happen next year.
Right, exactly. Yes, it'll happen in perpetuity, essentially. This will always be the case. So,
and we just need to. It's a new set of circumstances. We need a new set of things. And the NFL did them a massive favor by being the first one to say they were going to do it. Like that was actually a huge favor. I know we're going to move into the game here, but a huge favor to the NBA was that the NFL, who's like had like its own questionable history sometimes around how they treat the players and their things. In this case, that probably overall attitude around optics, like which would they are sometimes less concerned with that piece. Because I think optics plays as much into this as anything else. At the NFL doing this first just lets the NBA off the hook with what they might have felt was an uncomfortable decision around the optics, not around the actual health and safety, but like around how it looked. The NFL did them a huge favor.
100%. All things being equal, if players are feeling okay, feeling healthy, they should be able to get out there and play. And we assume that's the direction that the NBA will go. Before we get into the Saturday night game that the Brooklyn Nets, the scrappy Brooklyn Nets, almost pulled out, hit us up with a little bit of Built Bar.
Oh, baby, Built Bar. Holiday season, you need a little protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar. I got the flavors of a candy bar. I got the kind of the flavors of the ice cream too, but it's actually healthy for you. You're getting the best of both worlds, healthy and great tasting. So many flavors: cherry, double chocolate, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie. I'm not just going down the ice cream aisle with these things. This is an actual protein bar that is good for you. Gives you that extra fuel you need. If you want to get a little holiday shopping and need a little boost, maybe you're just running out of time because it's like, the holidays are bearing down on us and you all of a sudden look up and you realize you haven't eaten a meal. Built Bar has you covered there. You can also get into your favorite flavors. I said they built it around the flavors to make sure it tasted great, and then they boosted it up with the actual stats. Calories low, fat low, protein high. Maybe you want to just dip it into a cup of hot cocoa around the holidays. Built Bar, perfect for it. You can go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
And of course, our friends over at Bet Online have you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as the football season winds down and gears up for the playoff push. Bet Online remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head over to that new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. From football, basketball, baseball, NHL, boxing, it's all covered there. UFC as well, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. Dougster, there was a game. Took place on Saturday night. You might not have known it based on how many Nets were not necessarily available, but they were there playing the Orlando Magic. Do we change our stance? I'll dive right in on a rookie. Do we change our stance on one David Duke Jr. as he tries to do the Herculean lift and put the team on his back late in this one as they tried to rally?
He was amazing. I sent out a tweet on Saturday that was just, he's a net for life now after this game. Like everyone will remember the David Duke game. David Duke Jr., even if he never plays another minute, we'll always have it because he was everything you wanted to be. 18 points, 14 rebounds, which is all over the place. Had the putback dunk. I will say my opinion is not changed of him from before or after this game. I think that his game in particular is really well suited for these kind of like one-off performances. Mm-hmm. And this is actually a thing, if you follow a lot of DFS and have been sort of like go through daily fantasy stats on a game by game or week by week basis, these kind of performances will show up a lot from different players, from guys who don't necessarily have long standing careers, right? Because you can have a certain kind of game that can show up and it's like super high energy, very ball hawky, knows for where the rebound is, ultra aggressive, and that will play really well.
To lose mentality.
Yeah, and it plays really well. But by the way, I'm not saying he's not gonna have a long NBA career. That's not my point. I will say if you put him on the court and played him 36 minutes a night, he would not average 18 points and 14 rebounds. I think I can pretty confidently say that. I think he has a lot of overlap with guys the Nets already have that are in the same vein. And so that is where we probably don't see it forever with him in terms of minutes. So I will pump the brakes on my excitement for him. And I will say I was about as excited for him in the moment as anybody because it was just awesome, awesome, awesome to watch. So I think both things can be true in this sense. But yeah, it was like a David Duke Jr. game. I wish they had won just because of how good his performance was and how gutty and gritty and just high energy it was.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change my long-term opinion of him at all.
You said the putback dunk was great. He knocked down only one triple, but it was a massive one in the moment. And we had just talked about how here's a guy that was willing to pull the trigger in his first opportunity. Then the second game, hesitated a lot around the perimeter. So you like to see him do that. I think I agree with you. I think I almost wholeheartedly agree with you that it hasn't changed my opinion. It was awesome and incredible. I think maybe the only little interesting thing I would say is he a little bit more athletic, and does he offer a little bit more offensive upside than say a Bruce Brown? And this isn't a, so Bruce Brown, you get buried, but it's just interesting. I'll be curious to watch him over the course of the season if we do continue to get some sample sizes from him, because Bruce Brown, for all intents and purposes, has also kind of become this spot kind of player, right? Before you had any injuries or concerns, he was out of the starting lineup. You're rotating him through. And as you see other guys kind of solidify their roles, Bruce Brown has become this very flexible piece. And it's funny with everything we talked about this episode. It's like saying when the team is 100% healthy, which is maybe never going to happen this year, you start to think about how the hierarchy of pieces fit into it. And with the return of Kyrie Irving, good.
Yeah, so let me just clarify something I said. My opinion has not changed in that I think he could earn minutes on the team. Like I don't think he should go back to the G League. I'm saying that my opinion from like the previous game where he had gotten a lot of minutes and looked pretty good, and to this one has not changed. That's all I mean.
Right, which,
I think my opinion from the G League till now the summer league till now has changed because it wasn't totally clear how he would fit, and I think he's shown that he has ability to at least stay on the NBA court in spurts. So that part has changed. It's just like the game over game opinion, like that the stats were better in this game did not change my opinion from the game before, which is like all the same sort of concerns I have him for as a long-term player are still there. He can't really shoot. Like the on-ball stuff is not amazing. And he just ends up being like these other guys, right? Yeah. Like Bembry, like Bruce Brown. You see Gary Payton is like this. Like there's a certain dude, Eric Bledsoe, kind of was like a way more expensive version, like a way more expensive version of this, right? That's like he does certain things really, really well, but it's just not all there. But that set of skills can look statistically amazing in short spurts when given when you're not worried about anyone else on the team.
I said Alize Johnson vibes, right? Like a dude that was giving you massive double performances, and you also thought, I don't expect this to be the norm, and I don't expect this guy necessarily to be an integral part to what the Brooklyn Nets do.
Can I say one more thing? I was not about David Duke. I want to just say about where my opinion is unchanged about someone, even though the stat line went a different way. Okay. My opinion about Kessler Edwards is also not changed, even though this game looked not as good as the game before. Right. And because
that's a great clarification too. Yeah.
Like his statistic, like his line, he played 39 minutes, just 9 points, 5 rebounds. Like I also am not going back on anything I said about him, about really believing in what he can bring to the team based on this line not looking good, even though it was a lot of minutes, because he's the kind of player, exact opposite. He's going to actually really benefit from playing on the court with other good, like strong, dominant offensive players. Right. Yeah. Like playing with Kevin Durant, playing with even like when he gets to play with James Harden, guys like this who can like distribute a little bit, who will take the pressure off what he can't do offensively, that will actually help him. So like, I'll just say even though these games range differently on terms of their overall production, my opinion about either player is not changed. It's still the same. Like I still don't look at this game and be like, oh, Kessler Edwards, maybe he came back down to earth. No, he just wasn't playing with the right personnel for what his actual skill set is.
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit to any of these guys, and specifically Kessler Edwards, as we said, is going to be when you get him with, by the way, no Kevin Durant, no James Harden, no anybody. And in case anyone's wondering, I'm not going to change my opinion on Patty Mills. I know he shot 2 of 14 from beyond the arc. I still think he has it. I still think he has enough gas in the tank to be a contributor on this roster. But that's this is the taking the big picture view on somebody. And as you got samples from Kessler Edwards, you say, I see the skill set. I know what he's capable of. And I can't downplay what I think is possible for him when you're playing with Blake Griffin, Patty Mills, and then a bunch of rookies. Like that's what you put out there
Right.
on the court. It's never going to be the scenario for Kessler Edwards in almost any other situation.
And that's where a guy like David Duke Jr.'s like ball hawk sort of capabilities will look so good in this situation, right? They're going to look so great because the things the other guys maybe don't do as well, like rebound, for instance, like those other guys aren't really good, aren't all that good at rebounding, like especially the guards, right? So you're going to fill this void just by being able to do this certain thing that's going to look really good, where in other situations it's not going to be needed as much. So that's all.
Yep.
That's all I mean. I will say, I mean, maybe we say this for another episode. I am actually having a little pump the brakes mentality on Cam Thomas here, in terms of like what his overall. Maybe we don't have time to get into this today. So we got another day of, we'll save this one for tomorrow. We'll talk Cam Thomas tomorrow, I think, because I think that that I will say my opinion around him is changing a little bit in terms of what he is currently, the current form of his play, if that's fair. But I don't think we have time to do it right now.
No, here's the deal. We thank you for making the Locked On Nets podcast your first listen of the day. Our next episode will be about Cam Thomas. And I think Doug's right. It's a curious process about whether or not he needs a little bit gentler of a acclimation into the NBA game as opposed to this spark plug that we thought he was going to be, and maybe regarding him higher based on his draft status. That being the case, though, you can also make your second listen to Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q. He's got the expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling along with him there. It's free and available on all great platforms.
All right. And also make sure you're heading over to YouTube. The YouTube numbers have been absolutely insane for us. We're so grateful. I say this every episode, but I actually keep getting buoyed because every time I say it, the numbers just kind of keep ticking up. The subscribers up over 700, pushing toward moving up to 800 right now. Obviously, our long-term goal has been 1,000. So help us and jump in, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Joe, go jump in the comments. Adam did a solo podcast all about the Kyrie piece. If you missed that one, go back and listen to that. But make sure you subscribe to the Locks On Nets YouTube channel. I will put the link in the show notes.
It's, of course, the holiday season, my friends, and that means that we're moving into holiday quotes. How about this for one of them? I fell down a chimney and landed on a flaming hot goose. Rizzo the Rat.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets, human or otherwise. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.